He's here to share insights from his latest book, Great Hands, Great Life. Please welcome Dr. Terry Zachary. Thanks for joining me.
Daniel, good to be here and looking forward to talking to you. I think we have a whole bunch to talk about in many different directions, whatever we decide to play with, for sure.
I was preparing for the podcast this morning and I was just walking into the office and I thought, my grandfather used to have these round rubber things. I don't know what you call it, but it was like a rubber donut. And he would squeeze his hands with it. And I'd say, Grandfather, what are you doing? He's like, I'm keeping my hands strong. I said, why? They're big enough already. He was a boxer, he was a builder, and he had these big hands. And he said, I'm getting old and I've got arthritis and I've got to keep them strong. And he was always squeezing on these rubber donuts. And I tried to squeeze it one day and it was so bloody hard. And I couldn't even squeeze it with my little hands. And I realized that he had big hands, but he'd also done a lot of damage to them over the years. And as he got older, I saw the importance of him keeping his hand strength. But I probably haven't really thought about it for a good 40 years until this morning.
You know, it's something where it's funny. We just did some PR that we talked about health and fitness, and we work both in health and fitness, ergonomics, all kinds of things, because we're dealing with repetitive gripping. And one of the graphics we put together, Daniel, was where it's a young fitness professional in a gym, and everything is really clear that he's working, except elbow down, it's really blurry. And that's really the way the health and fitness world is. For many reasons, as we'll talk about, I was positioned very well to look at this. It was never anything I planned on doing in my life, but there is so little known about the kinetic chain of grip, I'll say, because it includes the fingers and the thumb and the hand and the wrist and the carpal tunnel and the forearm and the elbow. And it turns out that when I first started working with it, it was specifically with professional golfers and NHL hockey players. I'm in Vancouver, so we worked with the local professional team, etc. But I started to see the same grip imbalances all throughout all kinds of sports. And it started off mostly as sports. And I knew I had to do something about it. I really understood the mechanics. But when in practice, what I would do is I would have 3 or 4 items laying on a table, and I would put the patient or the athlete through a workout, and they would go through all of the muscles that I knew to work out at the time. And it would take a long time. But the thing that ended up happening is we ended up developing a product that made that a lot easier to work in your hands. But as I started doing it, I started to get feedback from all kinds of users that they're starting to sleep better, they're starting to just feel better. And I never put it together until about 3 or 4 years ago that we are training blood flow to the extremity, to the upper extremity. And that's, you start to talk about lymph drainage, which in this day and age, there's toxins all throughout our world. I think lymph drainage is going to be one of the bigger subjects in front of us. And we started to see that we're improving lymph drainage. So now getting to the concept of what your grandfather was talking, your grandfather or father?
Yeah, grandfather.
Grandfather was talking about. It's absolutely, he was ahead of his time in making sure he had strong grip. Strong grip ensures that you're going to have blood flow to your upper extremities. It ensures many things, obviously performance, but blood flow is a big thing with arthritis, which he was partially right on that. Now, I wouldn't agree with the repetitive gripping part. That will often stimulate some degree of blood flow, and blood flow stimulates lymph drainage all the time. It's a circulatory system. You build the pressure to the extremity, and you're going to build some degree of venous and lymph drainage. So he's partially right, but the only thing I would say, and that's how I grew up as well, Daniel. I grew up with take something and squeeze it. And I saw, of course, over the years and studying the body really intricately, I really realized, wait a minute, we shouldn't be just squeezing. We should be opening and spreading. We should be looking at how the forearm supports the grip. It just kept on growing from there on how I learned the mechanics. But your grandfather was right. The hands, which are, basically forgotten, especially in the history of fitness, are turning out to be stronger and stronger. There's lots of studies that say that grip strength and life longevity is directly correlated. cardiovascular health, mental health. So grip strength is super valuable, and that's why we are really busy in this area, even though it'll seem like nothing to a lot of people.
The sport I grew up around was wakeboarding. So we would have a handle. Normally for us, it was about 15 to 17 inches, and it was quite thick. And they changed length and thickness over the years. And you could either hold it with your hands on top or like a baseball grip, depending on your riding style. But for a lot of people, they would never realize how much strength was required to do wakeboarding. First of all, our boat was going around about 28 mile an hour. But that boat's got to get up out of the water onto plane. I was 100 kilos getting pulled up out of the water, and you need strength. You know, a lot of men fail at wakeboarding because they try to pull against the boat. You should leave your arms out, but you've still got to have the hand strength to hold onto the bar. We would go out and ride for an hour or 2 or 3 hours, and your arms would ache. They would be burning. But you never seem to have wrist or hand injuries. You'd get ankle injuries or knee injuries or shoulder injuries. The hands didn't get injured, but they were sore. They were so sore. And then when you hit the wake and you do a trick, sometimes you'd do a spin. And to do a spin, you would have to put the the bar around your back and grab it. So now you're flying through the air, probably going 35 mile an hour, holding onto a rope with one hand. And now you've got to land back on the water and to be able to control your speed. And we never thought about hands. Nobody spoke about hands, ever. Nobody trained for hand grip. They might have trained for handle passes, but never for grip. But it was so essential. And I remember this part of my arm, although it was never big and bulky like a bicep, there was so much strength. If I got my hand onto something, I could hold it really tight, but I was always clawing in.
Yeah.
And I've seen with your technology, it's not just about your description's going to be better than mine. You know, I'm grasping my hand. We were never thinking about extension. It was always one way for us. How can I hold on to that? That's all we thought about.
You're going to be surprised by this, because that's all a lot of the sports think about, and it's a lot of the way musicians think about. It's a lot of the way ergonomists, excuse me. So what
Every
happens?
time you say ergonomics, I stand correctly.
Yeah, but it's it's interesting how you brought that up, because what we would see now, depending on how often you did that and how long you did it in your life, I will tell you that if you did it for, and again, there's always exceptions to the
20
rule, but
years.
the common thing that we see is that if people are repetitive, so if I take something and I'm just squeezing it, you know, the common thing where you see the coiled grip strength there. So you go on that. I grew up with it. I grew up with that. I grew up with hockey and golf and basketball. I always wanted strong grip. So I had the coiled units. I would grip tennis balls. And what happens with that, Daniel, is your grip strength definitely does go up with that. So you're talking about holding a bar or rope when you're wakeboarding. You're doing that for whatever, 3 hours in a day. I could tell you those muscles, your flexor muscles, those are all the closing muscles, right? So your flexor muscles are going to get strong. Your grip is going to get strong. So your grip strength is going to go up. What happens is, and I'll explain that there's a kinetic chain of grip, is basically anytime I grip something. So if I'm gripping something with my hand, yes, those 9 muscles on the front of your hand and wrist and forearm and carpal tunnel and all the way to the elbow, those muscles are active and they're squeezing. Okay. Now, what most people don't know is the extensor muscles, all the muscles on the whole back, that same path, fingers, thumb, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, forearm, and elbow. Those muscles that attach on the back of that are contracting just as much when you're grabbing that bar. So it's a co-contraction. The thing about it is these muscles are going through a full range of motion. The flexor muscles are going through a full range of motion. The extensor muscles are just contracting statically. Okay. So what that means in the long term, what we see is, people, if you just repetitively gripping, you do it. We know, like people that are bricklayers, for example, all kinds of examples of repetitive gripping for a career and for lots of time during a day, and then extend that into months and years. Your grip strength goes up to a certain point, and then at some point, those extensor muscles, the muscles that are stabilizing the contraction, those muscles become really static and fibrotic. Just like if I was to hold a bicep, if I was to take a brick or a big weight and hold it and just hold it and say, and they say, Terry, what are you doing? Well, I'm training my bicep. Well, you'd say, well, shouldn't you take that through its full range of motion? And I would say, yeah, you're right. You should. That's what we're doing with that kinetic chain of grip. Yes, the flexor muscles are getting worked out, but they're generally getting shortened. Okay, we're shortening the thumb, we're shortening the finger, we're collapsing the carpal tunnel, we're shortening the forearm, and we're shortening the elbow on the flexor side with not an equal, it's not a fair fight. So the muscles that open and spread the hand aren't in a fair fight. So what eventually happens is, yes, your grip strength goes up when you repetitively grip. At some point, the extensor muscles, the kinetic chain of grip, doesn't have any support. The extensor muscles become static, just like that static bicep if I was to just hold it in one position over a long time. And then what happens is we don't have support for the grip. And that's what we see when you're dealing with somebody that's been, we dealt with golf. So we'd see amateurs that have been playing for 20 years, sometimes 10 years, sometimes 5 years, depending on what injuries they've had. But the professional golfers, you'll see most of the golfers on a senior tour they'll have elbow wraps, they'll have all kinds of things. Because what happens with repetitively gripping over time is the grip strength goes up, it kind of plateaus, and then it starts to go down. And that's when there's injury. And that's when I used to jump into it. And that's when I would see these patients. And after a while, you figure that out. So what I would say is, if you were really serious about wakeboarding and you ran into me back in those days, I would tell you to, yes, train the muscles that close the hand as well as the muscles that open and spread the hand. And even as you were getting stronger, you would have got stronger quicker, because we're taking care of the whole kinetic chain of grip when we're exercising that way. So the reason I say that is that people say, well, should I just do whatever I want for the first 5-10 years of a grip passion that I have, or if it's a profession or whatever, what have you? And I would say, no, you should be training those muscles properly to maximize that entire kinetic chain of grip. And that's what we can do. So we see grip strength go up well higher than if somebody was to just take something and squeeze it, because the entire kinetic chain of grip is being addressed. The other thing about that too is, eventually you're going to see, when you're repetitive gripping a lot, you can just tell by me closing my hands, all the joints of the fingers, the thumb, even the joints in the hand, they are mostly on grip. Okay, so they're mostly on the flexor side. So I'm putting pressure on the flexor side of the joint for how many years? And that's where we see arthritic changes. But if I am to close and open and spread and close and open and spread and go through a full range of motion, I'm not isolating one part of the joint, and I'm maximizing the blood flow, maximizing the lymph drainage. And that's how we take care of muscle balance. And that's how we take care of joint health, is that you always look at how the body, this brilliant body, was made in ways that we can't even imagine how intelligent it is. And when you study that, you just have to say, okay, well, I see how this works, and try to do the best you can to figure it out, and then provide exercises that complement that. And that's what we've done with this Handmaster Plus that we've developed.
I had an injury. I got attacked by 6 men, and they had cricket bats and cricket stumps. And I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the 6 of them grabbed me, and they were about to hit me over the face with the bat. And instinctively, my hands went up. The intelligence of the body. The hands just went up. I didn't have to think about it.
Yeah.
The hands went up, and the ridge of the bat, the cricket bat, is like a triangle on the top. It's really sharp. And it hit the bone here. And when the bat hit the bone, it sounded like a shotgun. There was this explosion, and they stopped attacking me. And people who were inside of a house at a party ran out because they heard this explosion. And it was so loud. And I was shocked. They ran away. I ran away. And after I got probably 500 meters up the street, I realized that I didn't even have shoes on anymore. Somehow the shoes had fallen off, and I'm running bare feet on the asphalt, and I can't feel it. There's no feeling in my leg. And I jump into the bush. And when I jump into the bush, my arm has just collapsed and almost folded in half.
Yeah.
And so I'm hiding in the bush, and somebody come and found me, and I went to the hospital. I sat at the hospital for, I think, about 8 hours, and it was a full moon that night. And the police came and saw me, and they said, look, you're not going to get your arm operated on tonight. All the loonies are out tonight. We recommend you go home. So I walked back to my friend's house at around about 6 o'clock in the morning because we couldn't get a taxi. And so I had to self-medicate. I got the Jack Daniels out and drank that and passed out. That was the only thing.
Yeah, bravo.
And then I went back to hospital the next day, and they checked me in for 3 days. So they did the operation. They put 2 plates in there and 4 pins, and they're still there today. But what I realized was that my grip strength had changed. My arms no longer moved with the same amount of flexibility. They wouldn't go into the same position.
Right.
And then I had to compensate. Even when I rode my motorbike, I had to compensate. When I went back on the wakeboard, I would have to compensate. And the way that I would describe it, it was like there was this lactic acid buildup, and I would do a little bit of riding, and there'd be so much pain in other areas of the body, but it was coming back to that grip strength, and I couldn't turn it as much. But nobody said you should do some therapy. Nobody said you should do some physiotherapy. They just said, just take the cast off, you'll be right. And I said to the doctor, what about the plate in the arm? He said, don't worry about it, leave it there. That was the therapy. And nothing was done. But then it did affect my riding. And even if I rode for, 60 seconds to 90 seconds at a competition, the arm would flare up. And I would always have to then think about, how do I cool the arm back down for the next event, which might have been just a couple of hours after. But there was no rehabilitation at all. So we'll call it 26 years later, nothing done to it, just compensating.
Well,
and every time you mention ergonomics, I got to stand up again.
No, so I'll try not to. Well, I probably will mention ergonomics again.
It's like biofeedback, isn't it? You get a bit of feedback and you're correct.
Yeah. The story you just said it leads into the next stage of what we do as far as training grip. So the first thing that I would say is that your story just lends right back onto how misunderstood this, hand, wrist, carpal tunnel, forearm, elbow complex is. That's the entire kinetic chain of grip, is elbow down. We have arms so we can grab things. That's why we have arms. And especially from the elbow down, now I've become a bit of a junkie to study the mechanics of this stuff, because we thought we had the best exercises that there was, as far as rehabilitative exercises, like recovery exercises, which we would have given you something like that at that time. But also for strength training, we thought, this is it. We've got it just nailed. And then I realized we had a lot of problems. The practitioners we work with, and I just saw just with the people I was working with, we would have tennis elbow was it's such a common thing in the world. And I think it's the most easy thing to prevent in the whole. It's fantastically easy to train. And what I'm speaking about is that we would do an exercise where we'd have them close against the ball, open against the cord, close against the ball, open against the cord. We'd see great things down to the elbow. And if they had a tennis elbow, we would have them do an exercise. And I could show you the ball eventually, but if I had a ball, in my hand, it would squeeze against the ball, and there's finger cords that go onto my thumb and my fingers. We would have them keep the thumb on the ball, extend the fingers, and extend the wrist back. Squeeze, extend the fingers, extend the wrist back. And what that would do is train all the muscles that originate on that lateral epicondyle. Like it's the outside of the elbow, because those are where the wrist extensors and the finger extensors originate. I don't want to get too complicated, because it's not that complicated. But the reason I bring that up is we would get very good results with that. Daniel, everybody would say, like, man, we're doing the hand open, hand close. We're doing the tennis elbow exercise. We're doing whatever adjustments, whatever soft tissue work, modalities, and these tennis elbows are going away like crazy. Man, we love your stuff. Then we started to get feedback, though, that, yeah, but they're coming back. So we're not getting complete stability. Something's still wrong. And then I got into I really started, as we started to evaluate it, one of the things I'm not a big fan of is doing things in one plane. So if I'm going to train the forearm, and then I'll explain the last part of this kinetic chain of grip. If I'm training the forearm, we used to do wrist extension. We would take like a wooden dowel and we'd roll a weight up and we'd roll a weight down, and you would get your finger extensors and your wrist extensors and your wrist flexors strong. But if you look at it, it's all in one plane. And one thing I saw, and I will tell you, it was probably from the hockey players originally. I saw that we're training them in one plane, right? And I didn't do that with the hand. When I was really critical about the hand moving through small ranges of motion. That's what started Handmaster Plus. But then I realized the support muscles. Now, something you said, Daniel, was you said your support muscles, when you broke, it was an ulna, I'm assuming you broke because you're showing me that side. And when you broke your ulna and they didn't, you said you had a hard time riding your bike. There's certain positions that your grip will be stronger in. If I'm a hockey player, my wrist and my forearm, my wrist and elbow and forearm will be in certain planes, and that will dominate. But if I do that day in, day out, I'm going to start to train my body to only be in those planes. And what we do is we show people to close, open, and make a figure eight so your body stays capable of full range of motion. The reason I say that is that we started to do this exercise where instead of training the forearm in one plane, we would start to train it through 3 dimensions. So we'd have the person close against our ball, then open and spread against our cord, and then make a figure eight with their hand open. And that way, so we train the 9 muscles to close the hand. We train the 9 muscles that open and spread the hand like we talked about originally. But then we also train that forearm through its full 3-dimensional range of motion. In your situation, I will tell you for sure, those are things that are going to help you, because if we don't do that, you will end up very static in the positions that you do mostly. So if you ride a motorcycle for hours on end and you've done that all your life, you're going to eventually have support muscles in that forearm that become very static. Then you go to paint your house, for example, or you go to weed whack your house or something and you hurt your elbow. You're not used to moving through 3 dimensions, which is most of what real life is with the grip. I'm usually going to grip something and go through 3 dimensions. We dealt with a lot of hockey players to begin with and a lot of golfers. So, the clubs move, the clubs kind of flexing and supinating, and then, extending and supinating, and then it's kind of pronating, and then we're getting into flexion through the ball. If we train somebody in one plane, 2 dimensions, and then we ask them to go hit a golf ball and they're doing that all the time, we're going to build them very static. So these are the things that we've learned about grip, is that you have to train the 9 muscles to close the hand. That's fine. Just like the old days. You have to train the 9 muscles to open and spread the hand, because those are some of your support muscles for those fingers. But then you have to train the 9 muscles also that are in the forearm, so that the body maintains its ability to be strong in all 3 dimensions of grip, no matter how you're gripping. So you went through an injury, you got a plate, and then plus you're probably going to do things that are in one plane, and that's very difficult, because over time you are going to get very fibrosed and shortened muscles into that particular position. You don't want to adapt into your habits, if that makes sense. You want to adapt. At the end of the day, you want to be strong and balanced with maximum blood flow. And so those are the things that we look for in grip.
I can stand here with my hands on my hip and it's no problems. But then I try to put the hands out like this in front of me, but I have to overcompensate. And I feel myself pulling my elbow all the way in to try to get the same angle.
Yeah.
But then I've got to bring the shoulder in. And I know even after 26 years, I never got that full range back. And I've got to put so much energy into doing that you get to the stage where you say, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Not at all.
When I was 40, so 6 years ago, I said to my wife, I want to stop going to the gym. And the reason why I didn't want to go to the gym was I felt that my joints were getting sore and I didn't want to get a joint injury. And I had a couple of knee operations when I was younger, I had the posterior cruciate ligament removed. Then I had the cartilage removed on the same knee. And I felt when I went to the gym, it just aggravated the joint. It seemed to make it worse. The muscles might have been strengthening, but the joint itself was deteriorating. So I said, once I hit 40, no more lifting weights. I don't want to do an injury to the joint, but I just want to do body weight exercises. So I bought a bag of these elastics and I started to use the elastics. And what I discovered was that every time I was stretching the elastics, the muscles were getting worked in one direction. But when the elastic was coming back in, the muscles were working in another direction. And I quickly realized that I had to use less energy, less effort, but my muscle shape was improving. I'd go to the gym and it was like 2-for-1 workout every single time. And I've been doing that for 6 years. I do it with upper body. I do it with lower body. I've never had an injury. I've never been sore, but my body is more in proportion today than it was when I was doing weights. And I've got all different types of these bands. And even when I'm doing sit-ups and things like that, leg extensions, then what you also mentioned there, just not on one plane, I would put them on my ankles and I'd turn my ankle out and then in and then front and back. And I was like, I have muscles in my body that I didn't even know existed until I started to use these elastics. And so it became very addictive for me. And I've got better ones over time. And I'll never do a regular workout anymore because I feel every time I use these elastics, it's 2-for-1. No injuries, no stress.
Well, you bring up many important points there, Daniel. I think one of the biggest thing that you can bring up is that we have to understand that the body, like I studied this is what I studied. I loved it. You study the joints, you study all the muscles, you study what planes each joint can move through, because each, the knee is going to be different than the wrist, and all these joints are completely different. The shoulder joints, a whole story on its own. So if somebody doesn't study all that stuff, and you can, most fitness, I will tell you, most fitness instructors, I think, are pretty well versed in a lot of things, but you'll get into some of the technical issues. And I think one of the things I see it definitely with the hand exercise, but you can almost parlay that to any part of the body. But most of what we do, we have a tendency. And remember the old days where it was just machine. Sometimes you'll see there was just machines. So there's a machine moving
They
in
never
one
suited
direction.
my body. They weren't good for me.
Yeah, no, but those are all moving in 2 dimensions, and your body doesn't move in 2 dimensions in reality, right? So we used to, and again, I worked with, I think, hockey players, but I can tell you many examples. Man, guitar players, somebody that works in the dental hygienists, things like that. If they're not training, or they're just putting their body through the motions that they do at work. I'll take a dental hygienist now all of a sudden. So they go in there, the same thing over time. First of all, they're forward. Now they're gripping, and now their palms are down, and they're doing these things all day. And it's a good career. These people make lots of money. They help a lot of people. It's a good stuff. But if they don't understand their main equipment, which is them, they don't know everything about these dental tools, and they know everything about those. I call those the secondary tools. If you don't know that main tool, and we will talk to them about now, this is what you do all day. Here's what your hands are capable of doing through full range motion. Here's what neutral is. You're going into flexion, into pronation. You're pronating. You're going to have palms down. So you have 2 choices if you want to continue to be a dental hygienist, I'll say, for this example. But I say this a lot for almost any example. I see you have 2 choices. You either quit your profession, which is clearly crazy, right? They go through a lot of school and all this stuff. You quit your profession, number 1, or you start to understand your body, and you start to offset the imbalance that you're creating during the day. So that's when we'll have them do things, and especially with the hands now have become easy. We've made the hands, wrist, forearm, elbow, carpal tunnel. We've made it easy with the product. They're going to do these things during the day, and they get a break. They put it in their hand. They go through this simple continuous exercise, and they're going to offset the imbalance that they're creating. So you can take that to any part of the body, and anybody that's out there that is, a fitness buff. We work with, people that are into powerlifting. That's one thing I would bring up all the time. So the powerlifters, and you see these guys, and their forearms are like my thighs. Big boys, good people, work hard, very disciplined at the top level. They've been repetitively gripping to grab those to deadlift, and they just have to bring it off and straighten up. And everything's going dynamite, and then one time, pretty soon, those extensor muscles that have been contracting statically their whole career, all of a sudden they have a tear or a micro inflammation, and they can't even grip anymore. Then it's kind of like, now what do I do? So they've adapted into their imbalance, and it's very one plane. We have to show them how, yes, you're a deadlifter, but you have to come away from that, moving your body through its full natural range of motion, so that you don't develop these fibrotic, repetitive areas in what should be a balanced body. So they go into their imbalance, and if somebody doesn't come up and be very technical about offsetting the imbalance, they're going to run into problems. And we see it in the gym all the time. And I would rather see somebody train through 3 dimensions. So I like resistant bands a lot. The best way I can say that too, Daniel, is your body is determining the exercise, not the design of the product. So in the old days, and I'll go back into hand exercise because it's really, really important to understand this, but I hope your audience can apply it to anything, any part of fitness, is that in the old days, remember, they have the coiled grippers. They're still very popular nowadays. So that coiled gripper, the way the product is built, says you're going to move your hands right through this one plane, 2 dimensions. You're going to go back and forth. And people, yes, they get stronger, but they start to build this. It's your body doesn't move in 2 planes. So with ours, again, you're going to go through 3 dimensions when you're strengthening. Our product, the product isn't going to tell you anything of how to do your exercise. It's the way your hand moves naturally will determine the exercise, and the product will follow that and bring it resistance through 3 dimensions, through a full natural range of motion. What you see in the gym a lot is you'll see the machines, or even just weights, the way people do it. Like, free weights are way better. At least it's going to be in 3 dimensions. But you'll have people using free weights probably overloaded, and they're going to go through, like, barbells don't allow you to do a whole bunch of 3-dimensional movements. You're still going to be in one plane, basically, right? And then, of course, the exercise can change that plane. But I so prefer, where available, to train where the body's natural movement is creating the exercise, and whatever the resistance is just resisting it, not determining how that exercise is done. Because we have to move our body in 3 dimensions if we want it to be healthy, strong, healthy, balanced, with good blood flow.
I had a clicking hip for most of my life, and I was a good boy. I was disciplined. I went to the gym, and I'd do the leg extensions. And I got off the leg extension machine, and I'd feel like an old man. Like, this is not good for me, but it's in the gym, and it's the option that I thought was the best. And so even up until 40, my hip would click. And I said to my personal trainer, I said, look, no weights. I don't want to get into a squatting rack. Just help me learn how to squat. And it looked like a big diaper. I had to put it up over through my legs. I'd sit into it, and then I had these bungee extension cords coming down from the ceiling. And he had me squatting using the resistance bands from the ceiling. And I would say within 3 to 6 months, my hip stopped clicking. And that had been a 40-year problem. I'd been to the gym, I'd done all the gym stuff on that single direction. But once I started to use these bungee cords in the gym, and just my own body weight and lunging properly, the problem disappeared. And for me, that was a huge benefit, because I had complained about this hip problem for my whole life. Never come back. 6 years later, it's all good. But I believe it was the body moving correctly, not in a single dimension, but multi-dimensionally.
It's I don't know of that exercise. That sounds really interesting because it's not uncommon to have clicking in the hip when you're doing leg extensions. It's not uncommon at all. Myself, and by training, I'm a chiropractor, so I always look at in the body. The body is, I won't say it's a picky thing, but it's a really intelligent thing. So, and we talk a lot about a body on a vertical center. So throughout my career, I talked a lot about having your shoulders level, your head vertical and in the middle of your body, your shoulders level, your pelvis level, and your leg lengths level. And people would say, well, which chiropractic technique or which physical exercise do you like the best? And I said, I don't care if you put a monkey in your head. And that's what happens to get you to where the shoulders are level, the
Mhm.
pelvis is level, your leg lengths are equal, and it can be attained, but the body is really picky with its balance centers. If my body starts to move off its vertical center, I dealt with professional golfers, right? So right-handed golfers can have the right arm a little lower for all their career, and they're hitting practice shots, you know, 6-7 hours a day for all their life to get to be that good. And all of a sudden you'll see a shoulder down here. And when the shoulder's down here, I can tell you that when they jump, when they walk up, the pelvis has to wander underneath the balance center, right? So they start to adapt off their vertical center. And then when the hips can start to do some crazy things, and you'll hear a lot of clicking in those. So my first thought always is the hip clicking, if that body's on its vertical center, you just don't see that much, right? But when
You
that,
would have loved my body when I was
yeah,
younger. My knees would collapse. I'd be running at school and my knees would collapse. I'd tell my mum, oh, my hips are sore.
yeah,
And so for 5 years, I was in remedial therapy, and the chiropractor was realigning the body.
yeah,
And so it wasn't just the knees, it wasn't the hip. The spine was out, the neck was out. I was like that. And then by the time they worked their way up to the skull, the cranial plates weren't formed properly. And because everything was out of alignment, I also had visual impairments. But the
oh,
visual impairments was coming from the pressure buildup in the head. Once they got the body aligned and the cranial plates aligned, they started to realize that I had a hearing impairment. But it was all this pressure built up in the entire body. And I spent 5 years in remedial therapy getting repaired. But once they got me straight and the body aligned, I stopped getting sick. My health got better. I could start to compete as an athlete. But it was 5 years of getting me straight on the straight and narrow.
well, whoever you ran into that had that theory, because that's one of the theories is it's a big thing with me. And I've got, now I've got, we've got 3 kids. We're all very active still. The kids are into hockey. My daughter's a baseball player, volleyball player. One of the big things we talk to them about, and people want to say, well, health, well, what about this symptom, that symptom? My biggest thing is I want the bodies to remain on the vertical center. I want their shoulders level, pelvis level. So they'll do their exercise, yes, but they'll do a lot of strengthening, a lot of stretching. And it's all based on, thank goodness, in hockey, our one son is a goalie. So in a goalie, you're fairly balanced in your position. Your posture is actually quite balanced. But our other son is a left-handed hockey player, so he's going to have left. So we got to talk to him. Same principles we've been talking about, Jonah. If you're going to be doing this all day when you're practicing, and they're on the ice a lot,
Mm.
then you can either expect to be like this as you grow into this body, or you can understand your body and offset those imbalances and remain balanced for your career, which will actually help you be a better hockey player, better whatever your athletic endeavor is and whatever your health is in the long term. It's one of the biggest things that I see on people. And even as we developed, that's why I say I was probably the one to develop something that could help people in their grip, because everything you're talking about in posture and having the body on its vertical center and how important that is, because clearly with the spine you'll have nerves coming out of the spine, and if those nerves are being tangled and twisted, and you're going to start to see the body doesn't work as balanced as possible, let alone just the idea that every joint is off its vertical center because of gravity.
Mm.
There's so many problems, but get that body on its vertical center. And that's all we saw with with the middle finger right through to your elbow is you look at, that's another vertical center. Now there's no nerves coming out of there, but there's a nerve going through the carpal tunnel. There's a nerve going out your elbow. It's a very similar thing. So I was really able to look at that and say, wait a minute, that forearm is getting really, it's just like having bad posture in your spine. People are having bad posture with from the fingers all the way to their elbow. And what I want them to do is I want to have that forearm on its vertical center, just like I want to have the spine on its vertical center. And so you had to look just like we do with the spine. If I've got somebody in ergonomics, if I get somebody in there, somebody in their office, and I'll go back to any office job, the tendency is to be forward. So you have to do something to offset that and bring your body back to neutral at the end of the day. So we have them doing a lot of extension exercises and neck extension exercises. We might have them swimming where they're doing front crawl and retraining themselves. But there has to be a habit to offset the imbalance that we're bringing into the daily routine. And the only way to do that to begin with is to recognize there is a neutral and you're out of neutral. And it's simple as that. So you ran into some good people, whoever got you doing that, because you won't recover. You'll chase symptoms the rest of your life if you don't bring that body back to its vertical center. Same with the hand, wrist, forearm, elbow.
Mm. In my particular business as a coach and a consultant, I have what's called an air product. It's just air coming out of my mouth. And my tool is my voice. And when I was about 36, so 10 years ago, I was speaking to a mentor and he said, Daniel, in your career, you're going to speak, you're going to sell, and then you're going to serve. And he said, the most important tool for you to develop is your voice. So I went and learned how to public speak, how to present to a small or a large group. And after I learned that, the trainer said, now you've got to work on the voice. You've got to work on your tone, your tempo, your pitch, your volume. And so I went and got a voice coach. And the voice coach taught me different things about voice and vocal strength and the way that the vocal cords vibrate and how to change the pitch of the voice. And I learned that. And then I learned a lot more about the science of what's happening to actually create a speech sound. And I first of all learned that there was 43 muscles in the face. And these have to be working correctly to get the right speech sound. So I started to learn about that. Then I discovered that my jaw was clicking. And so I found a device. It was called a Jawsize. And I'd hold it here in my teeth and I'd bite it.
Yeah.
And I was doing that. And the muscles in my face started to get jacked.
Yeah.
The cheekbones, or the muscles around here started to look different. This lifted up. This part got thicker. And then the jaw stopped clicking. I then learned the tongue is very important in creating speech sounds. I realized that the tongue has 8 different muscles in it, and it can move in every single direction. It's one of the most flexible muscles in the body. And so my voice coach said, Daniel, you've got to warm up your tongue. He said, most people have this really tense tongue. It's really hard in their mouth. He said, it's got to be soft. And if you can make it soft, then you can resonate your voice. So I started to do vocal exercises to stimulate the tongue to get it relaxed. Then I realized it actually takes 100 muscles in the body to create a speech sound. You've got to get the brain functioning. You've got to get all the nerves functioning. And you're not just breathing from your lungs. You're breathing all the way down into the belly, into the diaphragm. And then I realized through vocal coaching that I was breathing incorrectly. When I was breathing in, the diaphragm was coming in where it should have been popping out. And so I changed the flow of breath, and now I could speak a longer sentence. Now, it wasn't that I was trying to get more information in there. I could slow down and make sure my last word had power. And so I trained my voice for 10 years. And I started to realize that there was so much going on with the voice, things that I had never considered before. Most people just wake up in the morning and say whatever comes to mind, and they don't think about how it comes out. But posture impacts the voice. The muscle tension impacts the voice. But it was so far out of my awareness. I was so ignorant. And then I went, oh, wow, the body is amazing. It's intelligent. But it's up to us to find out what the intelligence is and how to work with it. Like what you're talking about here is the body knows what to do, but we do need the right tools as well.
You know, it's so interesting what you say because, you know, I remember being in, it was a course called myology, and we studied every muscle in the body. And like, yes, I know the muscles very well for grip, right? Like, this is what I work with all the time. Did I know all of them in practice? No, because I was working with other parts of the body. I was familiar in general with everything. But when you talk about all the muscles, it's interesting because I'm continuing to write, and one of the things I write about is I don't want to go too long about this, but I was part of a bullying software program at one point. We developed this through a group that we were working with, and we ended up the BC government took it on. Um, we basically had all the I would see all the anonymous bullying comments, and I would just be so sad to me. Kids would have such little self-esteem, and they would say, you know, Jenny said I should kill myself, and I'm thinking about doing it. Stuff like that. It was really horrific reading all these reports, but it was also enlightening to see that's the state of our children. And one of the things I'm writing about is I'm writing about even it can certainly relate to grip, but it's relating to everything we're talking about. I wouldn't have known all those muscles that you're talking about. I haven't been trained there, but it's very, very, very interesting to me. But I have been writing about how simple even we don't understand that early in the embryo, you're starting to develop the larynx and all the muscles that you speak, and how much intelligence there is in each one of our bodies. Because we look, you know, so I'm realizing these kids, for whatever the education they're getting, they can look in the mirror and they could say, I'm a loser. And I find that really, really sad because when I look and I study, when I went to chiropractic school and we're looking at all these little intricate muscles, and we talk a lot in chiropractic about how that was the intelligence inside us that built it, not only to know what these muscles are, but we built the damn things, you know,
Mm.
like it was us. We weren't over on the couch way over there while this was all being built. So it does, when you say things like that, Daniel, it blows me. It gets me back into the awe of what this whole thing's about. And it's like when I study the hand muscles, it's not just like, boy, I bet you I could invent something and really make a lot of money. And I bet you I could da 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 da. I could care less about that. It was just looking. I mean, that's one of the things that happens. And I have no problem with that, with helping them, you know, the better service you do, the
Mm.
more, the better you're going to do in general with your
Mm.
happiness too, not just money. But the fascination of trying to figure out what was the body trying, like what is this intelligence inside me trying to do, and why can't, and once you started to get people going like, oh, my elbow has not felt it like this in 5 years, and now I can do this, I can do that, I'm back to playing a sport or playing a musical instrument or whatever. And the feeling you get when you kind of connect with how the body knew to build itself, and you respected it enough to figure out how to resist the full natural range of motion, and then somebody's life changes, that to me is the whole thing.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's where you get blown away by, like, the thing is, this is the thing right here, it's a little ball with a cord
Mm.
through it. So if anybody says, well, you got a ball with a cord through it, yeah, but I can resist all the natural range of motion that this body designed it to do, which is brilliant what it did with grip. It's brilliant how they made a carpal tunnel and the flexor muscles all go through there. And if you don't make it imbalanced, it stays healthy for life.
Mm.
Right. So it's just getting back to those things you're talking about, voice. And I made, there's part of this chapter that is about the larynx and all the muscles that move the larynx up and down for different tones. Something inside me knew how to build these things, and I use them without even thinking about it. And you know, the more you think about it, the better you can get it. If you speak for a living, man,
Mm.
these are things you need to know. But I even another level is, yeah, and we built those things.
Mm.
Like, you can never look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm an idiot. I might look goofy to some people or whatever, but not to me.
Mm.
You know, it's this thing that we've built. We should never be bored in this life. Just trying to kind of connect with it all, and help others connect with it all if they're not. And I know from that bullying software, there's a lot of kids that are just not connected with what their life really is.
Mm. The body is incredible. I will research and read anything. I don't care if people think it's mainstream or Udo or voodoo. I'll read it and I'm looking to learn. I'm like, okay, some of it I'll disregard, but other things I'll think it kind of makes sense, whether it's been proven scientifically or not. And I remember I was studying Dianetics and Scientology. Now, I'm not a Scientologist, but I went and studied the material books. I thought there's got to be something to
Yeah.
learn here.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I learned was that the baby in utero develops sound in the first 9 to 12 weeks. And it said that if the female is pregnant from the 9th to the 12th week and beyond, the baby hears everything in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, it said, talk to your baby. So I started having a conversation with my daughter. Now, I couldn't prove that she could hear me, but it made sense to me. And then recently I was looking at medical research, which confirmed what they were saying, 60, 70 years ago, that one of the first parts the brain is developed is the sound. And so medicine today is saying, talk to the baby. Also, in Dianetics and Scientology, they say that if somebody is knocked unconscious, the hearing is still active and they can hear anything that's happening in the environment. And they said if somebody gets knocked unconscious, be quiet. Don't make any statements, because what they discovered was somebody would come along and say, this person looks like they're dead. The brain hears this as a command. And there was incidents where the body started to shut down, but it was perfectly healthy. Today, it's backed up with science. Back then, it was L. Ron Hubbard's opinion and his research, but now they back it up. So I remember at my wedding, one of my aunties fell down the stairs and she hit her head. And the first thing I said was, be quiet. Don't make any comments. Leave the room. I then learned recently that one of the last senses in the body to turn off is the sense of sound. Now, the sound is still active for minutes after brain death. So I heard that, but then I looked at the intelligence of the Taiwanese community, and probably around about 2014, our grandfather passed away here in Taiwan, and the family was still talking to him as if he was still here. And I was saying, what's going on? They said, talk to him and we're going to call him home. So the family gathered around, spoke to him at the soul level, this intelligence, the soul level. And what they did within minutes, they took his body into the ambulance and took it back to his home, to its resting place. And they talked to him the whole time. Now, that was back in 2014. And just weeks ago, I learned that the last sense to turn off is sound. So I will learn anything. I'll read anything.
I think that's...
And then I'll keep looking for answers. And I figure out these intelligent things. And I go, we are just scratching the surface.
Oh, yeah. I agree so much with that. There's a book you'd be interested in. Well, I mean, it's an older book. I can't even remember what I think it's called. My Stroke of Insight or something like that. It was a brain surgeon, I believe, that had a stroke, and she was present during the thing, and she could hear people talking, and that stuck with me as well. I just think there's an intelligence. Like we're energy. We're not just we're not just flesh and we're not a mechanistic. This is not a mechanistic life. It's an energetic life when it comes right down to it. And I think that's one of the things that we have to watch ourselves, is not falling into the trap of, your body's, excuse me, your body is this, you just hunk of meat and that's it. We have to be aware of what kind of energy we have, what kind of emotions we're going through. And I know even in our family, my wife's a counselor, so we're pretty good with that. But, life gets busy and there's lots of other opinions out there. So, a lot of things can affect you. And I think you have to really, it's one of the things that I hope we talk about more in this world, is like what this life really is. And like you said, we've barely scratched the surface of it. And in all of our individual lives, I really hope there's no reason to ever be bored. You're going to have passions, you're going to be drawn to certain things. But when you really get down to what life's about, I like studying embryology. I loved embryology. I love the fact, we were talking about posture earlier. I love the fact that you've got balance centers that, you got a baby laying in utero. There seems to be no evidence they will be walking at one time, and they're developing these balance centers, and it's only weeks into life. Like, there's just so much intelligence. So to keep on, to never, I wish every kid, I wish we could talk to it's what I'm trying to do with my next chapter of my next book, is to say, every kid, just look at yourself from start to finish, sperm to egg. These things that happen are so unlikely that you can't possibly explain them off with human intelligence. There's just a higher power that's with us all, and we should just be in awe of the whole thing. And I just find that every time I try to be aware of that all the time. Just lots of intuition comes to you, but lots of good answers come to you. But also you become more intelligent, and you don't take anything for granted. You don't believe hearsay just because somebody said that. You really look at it and you go, oh yeah, I think that is right, actually. Or sometimes you'll say, like, that doesn't, like, even we were told to grip in a certain way all our life. And I think I'm one of the ones, I think we're probably the leading person to say, guys, you got to realize this is an important area and we're doing it wrong. And the reason I did that is only because I'm kind of wowed by this thing of life and how we developed, and the embryology. When you look at this, these bones developed and the muscles developed along with them on all these sides, and all those 27 muscles came at the same time. Wouldn't they work together in what their activity was? And just all this questioning and delving, I think, is really fun to do, and I think it really pays off, and good things come out of it.
We have to be open to new information. And when I was younger, I was diagnosed with linear sequential learning disability. So I got the label, you're learning disabled. It's like, oh shit, I can't learn. But I kind of knew things that weren't in the book. I could kind of look at something and figure out how it went together, and I didn't have to go through A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And that was a systemic problem. What it was a teaching disability. Yeah. If the system would have said, this is not a learning disability, it's a teaching disability, we would have had better teachers, and they would have said, oh, Daniel is more kinesthetic, or he is more this style of learner. But the system said, we can teach you lineal ABC, lesson 1, 2, 3. You're not allowed to start earlier or later. I went to class 1 and I figured out what was at class 7 already. I'm done. And my brain shuts down and I'm creating problems because I'm bored. Not that I don't know it. Yeah. I'm bored. And then as I started to learn about learning disabilities as I got older, I said, well, it's up to me. Okay, I've gone to university and I lasted a semester. And I said to the professor, I said, look, you might think I'm stupid when you look at my results, but there's something in here that gets blocked when it comes to sitting down in front of the test paper. And you're going to look at that and you're going to think I'm an absolute idiot. But if your system allowed me to verbalize or even assess me on the application of this model, I'd be running rings around you and all these other students. So this is a system problem. And he said, well, Daniel, this is the system, and I recommend that you go back to year 10. I said, well, fuck you. I'm just going to not go to university and I'm going to figure out another way, because it's a systemic problem and it's a problem with the system. So I went and learned many different modalities, and then I learned about learning. And the three things that I learned was that we have information in our mind that's locked in, and we've got to unfreeze and melt away these old ideas and these paradigms. Once we unfreeze it, only then we can change it. But once we change it, then we've got to freeze it in once again. And it's unfreeze, change, and freeze. And if we just remain flexible and say that based on new information, I need to let go of some old information, we can constantly learn. We can learn new habits, but we've first of all got to let go of a bad habit. So we let go of a bad habit, we change, we learn a new one. And if we can all follow that process, unfreeze, change, freeze, then we can keep learning and we can grow continuously. And once we grow, we might not get a return on investment financially of all of this knowledge, but the return on life starts to amplify. Life gets better. You see opportunity where other people don't see opportunity. You have more peace of mind where people only have stress. And I think that is one of the greatest returns on learning. It's having a better life. It's never being bored. It's never feeling that you've got to the end of the road and there's nowhere else to go. Like these kids who are being bullied and thinking that this is the end of their life. No, there's so much more to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think what you're saying is really powerful there, and I think that's the way that I think that's one of the ways that we get stuck in in these static beliefs is that, and I'll go back to it. It's a hard thing to explain. I think we're coming from the same angle, is that we have this beside us mentality. This professor is just a little bit smarter than me, and he's going to teach me. He or she is going to teach me this and teach me that, and yet so much intelligence is beyond that. Like, and you start to question these, not question so much, we start to get curious about all the stuff that's really going on. Like, how can I balance my hormones right now, and grow hair right now, and listen to you speak, Daniel, and get to my, have my thoughts. How do I do this all at once? Like,
Mm.
how do I do this? I'm growing hair, I'm digesting food, and like, how is all this stuff going on? And I designed the whole thing. I did. So what is that part of me that's, I can't explain how I can't explain how I made an ear. You're
Mm.
talking about hearing. I can't explain how I
Mm.
made a pharynx. So something in me knew how to make that. And that's why I think we gotta watch putting limits on ourselves, and we gotta start to see that there's a bigger place to go. And we talk in our, I'm a really big fan of silence and meditation and things like that. And there's where you really get some intelligence coming. And I think we've got to get out of this idea that cognitive thought is where everything is. That's cognitive thought. I go to take another course and like, I went through a school. I liked school. I was good in school. I was similar to you. I could explain things. When I did worse at school is when I went to a certain school where there's multiple choice, and I kind of get lazy, and you don't know A to B to C to D. This about a kidney, for example. Kidney drove me nuts because I knew all the little choices. Intellectually, I could pass a test, but did I really know about it? I like that part of it.
Mm.
But I will say, Daniel, when I got out of school, I look in hindsight, it's like having children. I got out of school and I thought I was pretty smart, and then you go into practice and you realize I barely know anything. You start to learn about having a family, and you think, like, or being like, what your life's all about. Then have a family, and you're like, oh, I don't think I know anything. So the learning never stops, and I think we've got to be, you're really careful that we don't get, it's all belief system. And once you get this belief system that is really static, and you're not able to get to be open to just growth and intuition and things that are from a higher intelligence, if you ask me, and get into silence where there's higher intelligence. That's where I know for sure with this product that came up that we sell around the darn world now. It came up to me at 3 o'clock in the morning just because I had a buddy that I helped enough people, but it was really complicated how I was helping them. And this guy had a tennis elbow so bad. He had 2 kids at home, and we were playing professional golf and mini tours. So he was, you got to finish top 5 to make any money to send home the kids. I didn't have kids at the time. And it's like you go to bed with that, and next thing you know, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you wake up and you go, wait a minute, if I took a ball and I hollowed it out and did a couple of certain things, there's no lull in the exercise, that should work. And you get up the next day after no sleep, put one together for him and help this guy out. There's just so much more. I didn't learn that in school. I can tell you that. I learned the basics to dig further, for sure. But something said, this guy's, I need to help. I'm good at this. I need to be able to do something more. But I didn't, it wasn't until I shut my mouth.
Mm.
It wasn't until I kind of shut my mouth and just let my mind go on it that things went well.
Mm.
And that's where the whole thing started from. So I like what you're saying. The intelligence is well above us, and we can't be stuck. I don't know how you said that with the freeze and learn and freeze and learn. You should always bring information into yourself. You should always, like, train yourself. You shouldn't just give advice about something you don't know. but it's got to be an intake, we're bringing in and a giving out, and etc. And that cycle's got to continue as we grow. So yeah, that's well said. I like that.
The belief component is so important. We have around about 60,000 thoughts per day. 95% are just on repeat, and 80% are negative in nature. And I learned that from a Dr. Andrew Mikey. And so I thought to myself, well, if I have 60,000 thoughts a day and 95% are on repeat, there's got to be a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a lot of stuff that I need to challenge. And it comes back to belief. What do I believe? One day I was walking down the street like your 3 a.m. episode, and I thought to myself, look at all these bad drivers. They're speeding, they're parking incorrectly, they're causing accidents for other people. I should create an app on my phone that plugs into your car. You can see bad driving, you can upload it to the police, and you get a commission. And I thought about that and I went, oh, what a stupid idea. What do I know about programming? What do I know about technology? And I disregarded it. Today, some idiot smarter than me in Taiwan come up with an app. What you do is you record when you're driving, and when there's a driving incident, you send the 15-second video clip to the police, you upload it, and if that person gets fined, you get a commission. Some idiot was smarter than me and is making a fortune, and I was driving down the freeway and I indicated to go into the right lane. I turned the indicator off literally 1 second before the left wheel was fully into the next lane. That idiot, that intelligent person behind me sent the video to the police and I got fined. He got the commission. And I said to my wife, every time I have one of these stupid ideas, tell me I'm not stupid.
Yeah, there's,
tell me I'm intelligent.
Hey,
and
Daniel, there's opportunity. Yeah, that's the thing. I think there is opportunity. I've had things like that happen. I had an idea when I was younger. It was a golf idea. It's a long story, but it eventually came to fruition. Somebody developed it. And I think just, it also teaches you that, and it's not like, I don't think you should be looking for things like, oh, I want to get an idea so I can be the big dude, and just be aware. Sometimes you're going to still have to have a business plan, and it might make sense and it might not, and it might be something you don't really love. So there, but definitely there's opportunity all over the place if you're just open to it. But most people's belief system is so closed. Here's the way life goes. It's going to be this. It's going to be this. It's going to be this. And there's like opportunity all over the place, just outside the blinders. And no, I think for sure it's things like that. I do think as a semi-business person, you sure have to put your life into something you love to do, though. I don't know if traffic thing might be something you love to do, but it's straight. If it makes things better, it's worth it.
I said to my kids, we're going to apply the 3 R's. And they said, what's that, Dad? And I said, we're going to start to report people. We're going to ruin their day and we're going to get our revenge. And I'm going to drive around the island and I'm going to catch everyone. Dr. Bruce Lipton, I think he says, why is it a bad idea? Most people say because I come up with it. And he challenges it. He says it's BS. It's your belief system. But a lot of people tell themselves bullshit stories.
Oh, for sure.
Dr. Terry, thanks for joining us. For the people who are interested in your product, I know you've sold more than 1 million globally of the product. Where can they learn more about your product, and where can they get your book, Great Hands, Great Life?
Yeah, best place to go, Daniel, is to our website. It's doczac.com. That's doczac.com. And they'll find Handmaster there. Best place for Great Hands, Great Life, which is just everything and more that we've talked about. It's detailed about elbow down if they're interested in their body. You can get that at Amazon is the easiest place, and just search Great Hands, Great Life at Amazon. And if anybody ever has questions about it, the questions will eventually get to me. If it has to do with like mechanics or a question about health or fitness, they can send an email to info@doczac.com. And I definitely will reply to everything that we receive.
Dr. Terry, thanks for your time. Thank you so much.